Hi guys, I'll just wait a minute or two to get everyone in the room and then we'll get started. All right. Welcome to the State of Experimentation webinar. My name is Eni Oshinake, and I'm the UKI Marketing Manager for Optimizely. It's my pleasure to facilitate today's session. So the pandemic has been the catalyst for the acceleration of the inevitable shift towards a digital-first experience, with companies that have been slow to adapt being left behind, which is why data-driven decisions and continued experimentation are useful in creating those standout digital experiences that customers crave. But to what extent are the marketing teams embracing experimentation within digital strategy? Well, over the next 30 minutes, myself, Quantum Metrics' Bryce Winkleman, and CreativeCX Chris Gibbons will deep dive into the data from in-house research where we've surveyed over 200 marketers. But first, a few housekeeping rules. You can ask questions in the Q&A section of the chat, and the session will be recorded, and you'll get the recording in the email after the webinar. So I've already introed myself. I'm the UKI Marketing Manager for Optimizely. And like so many of you on the call today, I know that is in my role, I've struggled with things such as data and innovation and how we can create these experiences that cut through the noise. So I'm pleased to say that I have two great experts on the panel with me today. If Chris, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris. I'm a Chief Experience Officer at CreativeCX. So I'm an expert in UX and also experimentation with about 20 years now of digital experience, actually. So definitely been around a few years.
Yeah, nearly as much as I've been around. Bryce?
Yeah, hi, it's good to be with all of you. So Bryce Winkleman, Chief Business and Strategy Officer at Quantum Metric. Also spent many, many years in the world of experience and experience management, built the digital CX business over at Qualtrics, and now I'm at Quantum Metric helping drive our strategy and how we're going to continue to build and grow the organization. So it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm passionate about the topic, so look forward to talking about it.
Awesome, great. It's great to have you both on. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, who are Optimizely? Well, we equip teams with the tools and insights they need to create and optimize in new and novel ways. We've helped over 9,000 organizations around the world to deliver data-driven and hyper-personalized digital experiences. And we are on a mission to help businesses and individuals to unlock their digital potential.
Great, so I'll just do a little bit of intro to CreativeCX. We're a specialist experimentation consultancy. We're very focused on that subject. We're based in London, and I'm not going to read them all out, but these are all the services which we offer our clients. I suppose the most important thing over the last few years, we've moved away from purely optimizing and helping our clients grow through experimentation to a lot more enablement services, helping our clients grow their own experimentation teams, and even recently setting up center of excellences for them and all the training and the frameworks and processes they need. So the work we're doing is actually changing quite a lot, and it's I think it's just the nature of experimentation. It should be more than a tool for one team. It should be for the whole organization. And on the right are some of our current clients we're doing all this for.
Awesome.
Yeah, so a quick intro into Quantum Metric. So Quantum Metric is the world's leader in what's called continuous product design and digital experience analytics. And the basic idea there is we're really helping all digital stakeholders in an organization. So be it IT, UX, marketing, product, you name it, anyone that's impacting the digital journey for a customer, we enable them to have access to the business, technical, and behavioral data required to really not only just understand what customers are doing inside of those experiences, but to also quantify and prioritize the breakdowns that occur, and also the opportunities that there are to help their customers have a much better experience. And so really we're focused on helping organizations become incredibly customer centric and really have visibility into that critical touch point of digital. So that's what we do.
Yeah, thanks to have you both. It's great to have you both on the panel where I can discuss both from a tech and a solution partner's perspective. And once again, the data from this webinar can be found in its entirety on the Optimize website. You can download the Experimentation Culture Report today, and we'll share the link to this report in a follow-up email. So straight into it, we wanted to see how aligned marketers were with both their departmental and organizational goals. So we asked about the goals and ambitions of their marketing functions, and none of the respondents said they didn't know what these priorities are, which is a good thing. Hope they know their priorities. And this was across all levels, from marketing managers to marketing assistants, with the top goal, as you can see, being increase in market share, which is obviously directly linked to sales, marketing, and the overall business objectives. So Chris, what did you think? What takeaways do you have from this?
Well, I think the first thing for me, I was actually quite positive about it because they'd rated creating a more customer-centric business and also improving the digital experience quite highly. I thought that was quite positive, actually. But the increased market share is an interesting one because that's all about, the way I see it anyway, differentiating yourself from your competitors. And that's one of the problems in marketing and other areas. I don't think people are doing a very good job of that, but it's good to see that their goal is to do that. And I think the key thing is there's a lot of sameness out there. There's a lot of just copying others and following what everyone else is doing. And the way that we look at experimentation and how we really try to help our clients is use experimentation to get ahead, to be bold, to try out new things and to innovate. And it's so critical to do that, not to just see it as just finding out whether it's working or not, although that's really important. More like we can be more imaginative, more creative. That's really important. The other thing I'm a little surprised about is actually driving sales being the lowest, in fact, because normally that's what it's all about, isn't it? Just marketing, get conversion rates and revenues and driving your sales. But perhaps that's a sign that people are maturing and realizing that it's the other things, you know, improving the customer experience will deliver growth in sales. So perhaps people are realizing now to do things the right way. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, as you said, some of these intangibles are now becoming more at the forefront because we got so many more tech stacks to actually quantify stuff like brand awareness, etc. So sales is still important, but these other things are showing that they contribute to the ROI. Bryce, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I think Chris had some really, really good points there. And I think in particular, what's interesting is that kind of overarching goal for an organization is let's go increase market share. And all of these different elements are really required to go do that. And it's interesting to see how kind of tied some of these different options are. For example, brand perception. Well, the whole world was already going through massive amounts of digitization of the customer journey pre-pandemic, right? That was already happening. Yeah. And then pandemic hits, and all of a sudden it accelerates, you know, digitization for all these organizations across a range of industries. You see it everywhere: healthcare, telco. I mean, and it's everywhere. And what's interesting now is this: the customer journey has effectively shifted into digital channels. That means that's the channel in which your relationship is now being formed with your customer or prospective customer. That's where their brand perception is being formed. And so really, to change brand perceptions, you've got to improve the digital experience. Those are now inextricably tied. In addition to all the other benefits of a great customer experience, you know, spend per customer, loyalty, all those things. And so, you know, they're all very tied together. One point that the paper brought up that I thought was really interesting. In fact, it was so impactful. I wrote it down, and it said, digital experience strategies should not be created in isolation. They need to be intrinsically linked to the key goals of the marketing team and wider business. And I think that's part of the concept here too, is that all of these in different organizations sometimes have different parts of this graph that they're responsible for. But that's why it needs to be really much, when you think about digital and digital optimization, it now is purely a team effort. You can't go build something in isolation over here to improve brand perception if you're not over here working as well with the digital team from an optimization perspective. And when you see, when I say digital team, I'm talking everyone, again, product, UX, IT, everyone who's responsible for it. So it requires a lot of people coming together to go and really achieve all of these objectives, let alone increasing market share. So those are some of the thoughts I had about that and thought it was really insightful.
Yeah, totally.
It's not easy, is it always, Bryce, for all these teams to get their head around working together like that? And certainly
no, part of the hard part. And I think something we'll talk about here later is just that it's a big culture shift for organizations to kind of get past that kind of siloed world that they've lived in for so long. So you're right, Chris, it's a challenge.
100%. I'm a testament to that. The days of working in silos are over, but that's a good thing though. By the way, when marketers were asked about the approach teams took to creating and delivering a digital customer experience, the majority of teams felt stifled by current ways of working, with only 35% using a continuous development approach to refine, update, and optimize their strategy. And a notable 1 in 10 have no real strategy at all for delivering customer experience. It'll be interesting to see how these percentages would vary across industry verticals, depending on their digital maturity. But the percentage with little to no strategy is higher than I expected. What do you think of these findings, Chris?
I mean, really 37%, if you combine the 10.5 and 26.5 for no strategy in place or fixed strategy, 37% either have no or fixed strategy altogether, which I think is a real big problem, to be honest. And one of the things is, it's not about the obvious things around not having a strategy. It's also not having the kind of ability to adapt. And if anything's taught us recently, you need to be able to pivot. You need to be able to try new angles, new directions with your marketing and with anything you do in product as well. And you need to move fast. And also with the changing of customer behaviors over the last couple of years, I think we've all been shocked into, realizing how important it is to be flexible. So that's a big shock for me. I think the way I see experimentation is that it allows you to adapt more quickly. It allows you to get closer to your customers and to understand what their changes behaviors are, so that you can react to it. If you don't experiment enough, then you don't find out until it's too late, until you're losing that market share to your competitors again.
Yeah, and Bryce as well. What do you think about this data with regards to the amount of people in the market that have little to no strategy when it comes to digital experience?
Yeah, I had a range of kind of like reactions going through this. One, I was blown away that 10% of organizations had zero strategy, especially with how important digital is. But then also on the top end, 35% with a continuous refinement and development. I was like, okay, that's good that at least 35% of organizations are thinking in a more modern way. I mean, if we've learned anything the last 18 months, it's that digital and business generally is never, ever standing still. And, when you think about customers and customer expectations, you think about the rising generation, there's this phrase I heard once. It was, that they expect, I think it was Google fast, Apple cool, and Amazon simple, right? And so you have to think about that. That's what you're competing with all the time. And so there's going to be a constant demand that will continuously evolve and evolve quicker than ever before for things like personalization, speed, and ease. And so, with that ever rapidly changing appetite and changing perspective of your customers, how can you not be refining your strategy on a very regular, rapid basis? It needs to be inspected, looked at, changed, evolved very, very quickly. And, as we talked about in the last section there too, the additional layer of complexity now is it's not just one team that's trying to evolve that strategy. It's the fact is that now this like digital experience strategy spans many stakeholders. And it needs to be that those individuals are in a constant communication and collaboration about the strategy, that they're on the same page, that they're rowing together, they're looking at the same data. Otherwise, data can become a battlefield instead of an enabler to go and optimize this digital experience. And so, I feel like it's, it was shocking on both ends that there is a good amount of organizations having this continuous conversation, but that there's 10% that are absolutely doing nothing about it. And so it is the future, and this is going to be the differentiator of the future, and this is what will directly impact your ability to grow market share, as we talked about as well. And so those were some of the reactions that I had as I looked at this data and tried to understand it. But I'm hoping we see more head into that 35% mark here over the next bit.
Definitely. Like, I guess it's the way you look at it. It may not be all doom and gloom, maybe just by looking at 37%, because at the end of the day, it'll be great to see what that number was maybe 2 years ago, 24 months ago, before the pandemic. It might have been the continuous refinement and development number might have been sufficiently lower, but yeah, it'll be great to see how it's changed, because as we all know, the lockdown and the move shift towards digital has exacerbated now, because people, it's not a choice now. The market's moving rapidly. So yeah, I think the trend is towards more digital experience. But yeah, it looks like 35%. That'd probably be higher if we looked at this time next year, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah,
it's good that you're being more positive than me, Bryce. I was a little bit pessimistic.
You're counterbalancing each other, though. It's good to have both. You need the bearish and the bullish outlook on every.
Yeah. You're and Chris, I think you're absolutely right here that the trend will tell all, right? Yeah. If the trend has stayed flat, we're in trouble. If it was 12%, we're up to 35% in the last 12 to 18 months. Okay, like we're actually people at least getting the concept that, hey, brand perception, market share, all those things are now driven by this digital channel, and we got to get after it. So that is a good point.
I was just thinking from what you were saying before, one of the great examples of one of our clients and a sector really was the furniture sector, because during COVID, when that was all locked down, they had no choice. They had no retail stores anymore. So they were forced to get ahead digitally. So they had to pivot, they had to experiment with, and our client, what they were doing is they suddenly had to put together video chat. So they had the staff still employed at the stores, in the dark stores, they called them, so that customers could then phone them up and could then kind of, with a selfie stick, could see how soft the sofa was with the store staff kind of demonstrating things. So that was almost like a hack together solution that they had to do really, really quickly, but it almost that situation forced them to innovate like that, which is really, really interesting. So I am positive also.
Good to hear. It's good to hear.
Good.
Yeah. So moving on to the next question about techniques and tools. We asked the 200 marketers, how often do your marketing team use the following to deliver digital experience: personalization, experimentation, collecting and analyzing data, and data to influence shape and decision? Now, just over half of them are using experimentation and testing on a regular basis. So there's obviously room for improvement, but yeah, experimentation is on par with personalization, which I was kind of surprised by. But I guess because of the way that experimentation can mean a lot of things depending on what you're referring to. So they could be A/B testing emails, or they could be doing multivariate testings to landing pages. They could do, there's a whole world of things that experimentation could fit into in the same way personalization does. But Bryce, what was your thoughts on this data?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm a little more pessimistic about this. I think of the concept of the impact of personalization, the impact of experimentation on the overall customer experience, and how it doesn't take a lot to go and have a really big impact in that world. And so I want those numbers to go up, and to go up significantly. Yeah. I do think that's a really important element that organizations not only bake into their strategy, but can help kind of be the foundation of their strategy going forward. The other thing that really stood out to me is that a lot of, most mature organizations, these elements are very tied together. For example, you'll often see, data and analytics are going to show you where to experiment. And then a really good experiment is going to really help you understand how to approach personalization. So I feel like these are all things that need to also work together and not necessarily be done in isolation. So as you're building a strategy, it's, hey, how are we using data to inform this, and how are we using this to inform this? Because it really all needs to work together. So those are some of the things that really stood out, to me as I really tried to digest this a bit.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think the personalization one is always a funny one, because people have very varying opinions of what that means. So it could just mean a targeted email in marketing. It could just mean testing the subject line of an email. Or, I mean, hopefully it means kind of real personalization of the whole experience. Because there is a little potential in this, but I think people forget. And also people forget sometimes to even test their personalization. I've seen a lot of instances where people are doing personalization, but they never have a control. They never actually test it. So effectively, they don't know if it's really working or not.
Yeah.
So that's it is quite good to see the number of people who appear to be testing here. Which I guess is getting better. I would love to see in the next report that you do about how many teams are involved in experimentation. That's when it gets really interesting, because ultimately a lot of the work we're doing at the moment is trying to help teams operationalize experimentation. Almost make it part of the default process for every team, whether that's trading, whether that's product teams, whether that's merchandising teams. It should just be built in. And that's when you start to, and so it's less than about, say, 20% people are doing it. It's then more like, no, 50% of the whole organization is experimenting. That's what I would like to see. So perhaps you can add that to your survey next year.
Yeah, that's a good one, to be fair. Yeah, and what I found was pretty telling as well was that the collect and analyze data was quite high. So that means that a lot of people are collecting data, but maybe less of them are actually taking the next step and using the actionable insights to change, to make changes. So I think people get a bit scared once they have the data, they don't know what to do with it. So that's as you said, all about making it easier so that the operational person within the role can actually use the data and for experimentation or personalization.
It's a really good point. It's right. How is data informed? Like, data is great, but I feel like organizations don't need more data; they need more insight, right? And so with insight, you can take action. And so, how are you using that data? And most every organization out there is collecting data of some kind, but unless you do something with it, it's not going to do you any good. And really, that can be the first step in leading you to a much more rigorous culture around experimentation, personalization, and things like that.
Awesome.
I think there's a real problem with the usability and accessibility of data. So it's the probably so many of these people have access to normal analytics, but it's not always that accessible for many teams. That's why your tool, Bryce, has done so well recently, is because it's making data more accessible to a greater number of people at organizations. And that's, to me, it's just like, to your point, data is useless unless you can do something with it, unless you can really get insight from it. So
definitely. So to what extent, if at all, is the understanding and use, is this understood, used within your marketing team? So what this data was asking was, the positive news is that a notable number of marketing teams are readily adopting a digital experimentation approach and weaving into their wider marketing strategy. Yet this means more than half have more work to do to embrace this opportunity. And of those that are carrying out digital experiences, are they doing this effectively enough?
Yes, so this one I am going to be pessimistic about, because actually 37% not set up for experimentation if you're in marketing, and digital marketing is really high, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite high.
So and I guess my point on this is the fact that if we look back to one of the first slides around their marketing goals, and they have quite kind of a lot of people have really good goals for making a difference, for improving their marketing. But how are they going to achieve this without experimentation if 30% don't have experimentation set up? I mean, for a start, they won't know whether anything is working or not. So they won't know if they're heading in the same direction. It will just be guessing. And then I think without experimentation also, it's not just about kind of being able to get your ideas out there. Firstly, you won't know what's working, but secondly, you can't take any risks. And I think risk taking is one of the biggest things. Again, to the point I made earlier about the sameness, about everything being a bit the same now, or copying competitors. The only way you can differentiate yourself is if you take bigger risks. But the only way you can take risks in a big business is to be doing it in a controlled way with the safety net that is experimentation. That's the only way you can really try things out and be creative. So I don't think people are going to achieve the goals, and they won't even know they're achieving the goals unless they can really start to adopt experimentation in this area. So yeah, that's my kind of take on this one.
Yeah, I don't know if I can add much more. What Chris said there, I think it was right on, very astute. I think it comes down to a cultural problem for organizations that aren't doing it right. Is there a cultural shift, a mental shift to like, we're making data-led decisions, and also hey, is it okay to try and to fail and to pick yourself up and experiment? So I just feel like it needs to. I think it comes down to a cultural shift, and I think that's evidenced by some of the future data we'll look at here.
Yeah, that's just on that point around the culture. I think one of the interesting things when you start to get when you work with different teams. So I'm not talking about like a single optimization silo team. I'm talking about as soon as you start talking to product teams and designers, for example, there's quite a lot of work you need to do to get them into the concept of an A/B test and actually trying out more than one thing at the time. That's another really important cultural shift to get them to understand that there isn't necessarily one solution to a problem and then that's it. People get very kind of focused on their solution, but to open them up to the possibility of there being several different solutions and actually kind of getting them to push a little bit forward. That is a big cultural shift for a lot of people. For a start, knowing that their idea may not work is quite a big one, but also knowing that they should be able to put more than one idea, that they should be doing ABN testing, not just an A/B test, actually have several ideas and a wildcard idea and really pushing boundaries a little bit. And that's tough for people actually.
No, I totally agree. So with regards to this slide, we it's quite a lot of data here. So we asked marketers when thinking about their career, what aspects of the role appeal to them. So they asked from marketing assistants all the way up to marketing managers what they thought of the role. And now there's a lot of data here, but one stat that jumped out to me was that 25% of junior marketers enjoyed experimenting to determine the optimal approach in comparison to 19.4% of marketing managers. What I took from this is that because junior marketers are the driving force for change as they seek innovation through experimentation, as their roles are probably more operational, so they probably reap benefits of these things as the ones enacting a lot of the campaigns and strategies that get implemented. What do you take from that, Bryce?
Yeah, and I'll try to be brief here, but this kind of comes back to the cultural concept that we were talking about. What's interesting is I feel like, and this is encouraging, that a small number of junior employees are feeling that they have the support they need to go and experiment, and that's starting to be built in, and hopefully that shift in having those junior employees really focus on that and develop chops around that, it will help as they continue to progress throughout their career. It was interesting to see a bit of the drop off though in that respect as the employees became more senior. Some of those appetites started to drop off into fall, and so hopefully it's not a cultural problem of, hey, as I progress in the career, there's less data-driven decisions that I'm trying to make, compared to hopefully what it's saying is that, hey, I'm having these junior employees build this skill, but we're using that data to consume and kind of make those data-driven decisions inside of the organization. And so, it needs to be a cultural shift, but it does start usually at the junior employees and go up from there. And so, but I found some of this data very, very, very encouraging on that front. But we need to get some of those executives a little bit more in the details when it comes to things like experimentation, things like focusing on improving the customer experience and things like that.
Yeah, I think we can call it a trickle-up approach.
Yeah.
So thinking about your role in the marketing team, which of the following statements, if any, apply to you? That was a question posed to get the data from this slide about attitudes. Encouragingly, only about a quarter of marketers feel this opinion is not valued. Their opinion is not valued by their superiors. perhaps more importantly, only 14% say they don't have enough freedom to try new things, suggesting that across all levels, teams are able to actively contribute, which is a good thing, I think. Chris, what do you think about that?
No, I think it's a good thing. I mean, I would guess that those who are not currently given the freedom to try new things are probably from quite kind of they're probably from organizations that really haven't kind of embedded experimentation yet. They're probably living in the world where actually there's such a high risk in anything they do that they have to play it safe all the time, I would imagine.
Yeah,
because that's one of the key things, and also they probably live in a world still where it's very top down. Yeah, where they're given roadmaps and things to deliver rather than actually empowering those teams with the ability to add more and come up with new ideas. I think that empowerment is absolutely key, and that's what experimentation can give you, that kind of empowerment, that freedom. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah. Sorry, just for me to interject as well, we actually have some great content on this subject in particular, and we always talk about HIPPO, which is the highest paid person's opinion, and it's about how when you're armed with data, you don't feel like you're challenging seniority when you come up with ideas, because you're backed with stats to really create data-driven decisions. You can say, hey, this is why I want to do this, not because it's my opinion, it's because the data shows. And when junior employees have access to data like this, they can basically enact campaigns and actually have a voice, as well as being trickled down from seniority. So that's something I thought that would be interesting as well.
Cool. I suppose just one thing to add on that, there's like a personal development side of all of this as well. If you're junior and you never really get to learn if what you're doing works or not, actually you don't learn and become better at your job, do you? It's almost like you live in a make-believe world, don't you, of never really knowing if it's working or not, and just going with your guesswork like that. So
yeah, definitely. Cool. So in terms of how the junior team members view their CMOs, the results are encouraging, with over 50% calling them supportive and 44% saying they are inspiring. However, there's evidence that these figures could be improved by CMOs collaborating with them and involving them in the team more. Only half of those in any of the roles surveying said they worked closely with the CMO, which suggests that these senior decision makers can gain even more success by seeking contributions from the wider team, just as we discussed a little bit earlier. As a final observation, just over half, a fifth say that they thought the CMOs were bold, and indicating that this proportion are actually inspiring and nurturing creativity in their teams by acting with originality and courage. But surprisingly, the mass majority of the innovation comes from operational roles. Incorporating digital experience and a more consistent test and learn approach could be just what is needed to both engage the internal teams and improve the digital experience for customers. Chris Bryce, is there any advice you'd give on how to embolden teams at all levels?
It's a good question. I mean, I absolutely see the need for it, right? When we looked at some of the past data, it's those junior employees are the ones that are primarily engaged in experimentation. But if they're not collaborating with the CMO, then what decisions is the CMO making, right? And there was an interesting data point too on the last slide where, particularly with the junior employees, they're encouraged to contribute ideas, but they're also the lowest when it comes to feeling like they're making a positive contribution or that their ideas are welcomed by their colleagues, right? So it's like they're being told to like, hey, contribute stuff, but like it sounds like it's getting lost into a bit of a black hole there. So to encourage that culture of experimentation, like, and this goes beyond just the world of digital, it's more about how do you engage your employees, right? But they need to be, skip levels, town halls, innovation sessions. The CMO really needs to stay connected to the details. And there's a lot of ways to go about doing that. But as they do that, not only will they make better decisions, but I think they'll actually, they'll be viewed as a bolder leader inside and outside of the organization.
Definitely. So, So but the good news is that marketers are showing that they're actively seeking out new ways of delivering an optimal digital experience within the next generation of CMOs, taking a hands-on approach when it comes to experimentation and personalization. Here's a slide that shows about 5 ways CMOs can embrace and encourage the culture of experimentation with their organization. We talk about being bold, which is take a step out of your comfort zone so long as it's properly planned and be able to learn from these setbacks. Reward creativity, which is about giving everyone in your team an opportunity to contribute ideas, as the data has shown that a lot of innovation comes from the junior roles. Provide regular training. When tools and techniques are evolving, when tools and techniques are evolving each day, training is vital to stay ahead of the curve. Test and measure, which is all about, it's important to be methodical as well as creative when approaching experimentation. So try new things, but make sure to measure and analyze outcomes. And employ experimentation tools. So test instead of guess. With a bespoke experimentation tool to deliver one-to-one experiences at scale. So these are just some ways you can, CMOs can really embrace and encourage the culture of experimentation within their organization. So now, does anyone have any questions, Q&A questions in the audience? Okay, then I think we've got a couple questions here. Of the key questions you discussed today, which areas do you expect to see the biggest change over the next 12 months?
Well, I would hope that I'd like to see the percentage of people experimenting and being more creative going up. So, I mean, from a practical point of view, I hope that kind of, I can see, I'm hearing from more and more clients who have high ambitions in this area, which is really encouraging. So, and so if those ambitions are fulfilled, I'll be really positive, because I'd love to see this kind of some of the numbers of people experimenting going up next year. So I'm feeling optimistic, actually.
Okay, we've got another question here. Bryce, do you have an answer for that as well? Or?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Go ahead. It was well said.
Yeah. Cheers, Chris. What is the best way to get started when it comes to building a test and learn culture? It's a great question.
The best way to get started is really, I would say, to not boil the ocean. Start small, go get a few wins, prove the value of the wins, and then iterate, right? So I would say that's one, is that just start small and grow from there. So it can be as simple as, hey, let's just go test a banner. Let's just go test a subject line. Let's just go and start doing let's just go get some quick wins. And then if you're a leader inside of an organization, it needs to be something that is encouraged. It needs to be encouraged, and it needs to be expected as we're making decisions as an organization. So I think those are just 2 very simple things that you can do, both bottoms up and top down.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, we always say the same thing. To get internal stakeholder buy-in when you're trying to start an experimentation project is sometimes to just get, as you said, a low investment proof of concept internally. So as I said, start small, do something that if it doesn't work out, it's not really going to be a big hit to the organization. So and then once you can get buy-in and use that as a use case, you can then start scaling up and get stakeholder buy-in, because you have some data to point at rather than theory.
That's exactly right. Yep.
I'll just add to those really good points, actually, that I think one of the obstacles sometimes is experimentation and A/B testing can seem like it's not really part of my job, depending on what your role is. It's like, oh, that's some other team's responsibility. They do that silo team over there, and I think so. Therefore, to kind of improve the culture, you need ways of talking the language of a designer or of a marketer, and actually get them excited about their ideas. So rather than going to them and say, here's some ideas, I want to test that, is that okay? It's more get them excited about being bolder, and do collaborative ideation sessions where you actually encourage them to get out of their comfort zone a little bit, and then that makes experimentation sound much more exciting to them, and that can really help.
Yeah, I love that. Go and
Yes.
you need to bring a lot of people to the table, right? Stop working in silos. I think that's a key way to get started too. Yep.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the key takeaways. Not just for marketing, or even just at organizational level, the hierarchical structure is still in place, but everyone works in matrices these days, and the way you use your tech stack needs to reflect that. And if that's one of the key takeaways, don't work in silos.
Yep.
But final question we've got. We know we should be experimenting more. We want to scale, but not sure how to go about it. Any advice or tips?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing with experimentation and scaling is obviously not silos, getting all the different teams involved, but also encouraging parallel streams of experimentation. So not being confined to there are a lot of organizations that still kind of just 2 or 3 tests a month, and we'll do one test and then we'll finish, and we'll do another one, then we'll finish, and another one. Actually, we need to encourage there are so many different streams in marketing, especially. With one of our clients at the moment, we've got 5 streams. And actually we're doing paid search optimization of one stream, just focusing on the landing traffic from Google Shopping. And we're doing another stream, which is multi-arm bandit testing during sale period. That's a whole other stream with different people we're talking to. And then there's a team which is focused on the UX and the product side of things, another stream. And that's how you scale. You just do one stream at a time. And that's been a real big success for us and our clients, actually working that way.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We always hear obviously lots of companies that want to get involved in experimentation, but obviously you want to start small. But as you said, the more you do, the more data you can get, and the better informed you are to make decisions based off of that. But I think that's all the questions we have. I'd like to thank both Chris and Bryce for joining me on this webinar today. If you'd like to get in contact with us or email us, our emails are there, and we'll send this webinar out to you guys afterwards, and appreciate you joining us today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.